Sounds good. All right. So, good evening, everyone. Let me just fix myself up here. All right, perfect. Yep. Let's begin. So, thank you all so much for coming this evening. As you heard, my name is Deborah Buchanan Walford, and I'm the president of ONABSE, the Ontario Alliance of Black School Educators. And I'm also an educator. I teach high school, and I've been involved in a lot of different atmospheres when it comes to community work. So, I'm really happy to be a part of ONABSE and to participate in this work. I before I go into my um, spiel or my address, I kind of just want to ask everybody to pause for a moment and reflect on a time when you felt like you were successful, and think about who comes to your mind, apart from yourself, of course, that enabled that success. Like, you can just think about it to yourself, or if you want to put that in the chat, but really reflect on what that looked like and who that person is or was. Um, and for many of us, that could have been a teacher, it could be a family member, it could be a community member, but there is someone out there that we can all say at some point in our lives, whether big or small, contributed to our success. And this evening, we are here to talk about that. We're here to talk about how important it is to cultivate success and excellence in education for Black youth, Black educators, through the concept of mentorship and essentially an institution of care, caring about young people. So, we are honored to have with us tonight two speakers who are well equipped to dive into this topic and to share their expertise with us. And that is um, Miss Dionne Banton. She is from the University of Toronto, and I will not do their full intro. They're going to introduce themselves properly in a moment. And also Tolorunlogo Akinrinola, and both of them are going to be discussing our theme, empowering Black excellence, or students, or future. I would also be remiss if I did not acknowledge the wonderful Ianalua Akinrinola, ANAPSI's Director of Youth Representatives. This evening is her brainchild, her work, and I am so pleased to be here with her and under her direction as we go through this evening. So we're going to spend about an hour and a bit together. So everybody make sure you're comfortable so that we can get started. Okay. So firstly, an overview of ONABSE. ONABSE is a non-for-profit organization, and we are dedicated to Black youth and Black educators in different ways, supporting, empowering, engaging, amplifying work that we're already doing, partnering with other community organizations. We are an affiliate of the National Alliance of Black School Educators, which is based in the US. They were founded in 1970, and ONAPSE was founded in 2013. So we've been here for quite a while, doing this work. And the work in itself focuses on lobbying education stakeholders with our interests. So that includes the Ministry of Education, other community partners, school boards, etc. Anyone who has a hand in the profession of education and how it impacts Black educators and Black youth. We also have professional development opportunities that are developed mostly by Black educators and people in the Black community for us, for Black parents and Black community. We have our annual conference, which this is the 10th year of that conference, and I'll speak more about the conference later. And every year we aim to have a variety of voices and perspectives to share with the community. And last but not least, we are an affinity space for education professionals. And I want to make it clear it's not just teachers, it's anyone in the profession who is an educator, who identifies as Black, and who wants to participate in that sort of space, as well as youth and parents and community. Our goal is to be a voice for the community. There can never be too many voices, and we want to amplify that work. We want to push for real, lasting change. that once it benefits us, it benefits everybody because we're all in this province and on this planet together. So before I hand things over to Yanalua, I just want to also make one sort of request and plea as it pertains to the conference. We need sponsors for the conference. We want it to be something that's accessible to community and to the public. And the more sponsorship we get, the more we can subsidize costs for attendees. So please consider donating. And it doesn't matter how much you donate. We Every dollar counts, every mickle make a muckle, as we say in Jamaica, right? So everything adds up. So I'll be sharing a link in the chat that you can visit, and that will allow us to benefit from your generous sponsorship. So thank you. I'm looking forward to the conversation. I'm going to hand things over to our host, and I hope you all enjoy the evening.
Thank you very much, Deborah. Thank you for that reminder to reflect on our journey thus far and the different ways in which individuals in our lives have encouraged us to get to where we are today. As been said, my name is Yana Lua. I have the honor and privilege of being your host this evening. I know that there are more people that are meant to join, but because 5 years of the post-pandemic era has not been enough, we're still learning how to use Zoom. That's okay, but we do hope and look forward to more people joining us as we continue the conversation. Just to start us off, so that we know exactly who we have in our midst to share their knowledge tonight. I will call on our panelists to introduce ourselves as themselves. Sorry, as Deborah briefly mentioned, we have Dionne Banton, who is the outreach coordinator out of University of Toronto, Timothy Medicine, the Faculty of Medicine, and we also have Tolorunlogo Akinrinola, who is the graduation coach for Black students out of the Ottawa Catholic School Board. So why don't we start with you, Dionne? If you can just introduce yourself and share a little bit about yourself with tonight's participants.
Hi, thank you. Thank you all for having me. My name is Dionne Banton. I am the outreach coordinator for the summer mentorship program at the Temerity Faculty of Medicine, as well as our latest program, which is called MedLinks. I come from a background of working in hospital for over 10 years, but my original background is event planning. So now I like to call this I plan educational events for students. Our focus is for Black, Indigenous, Latin American, Filipino students and providing access for them to learn about health sciences within the University of Toronto. And yeah, that's what I want to do. And that's where I'm at right now.
Thank you so much, Dionne. Tolorunlogo, would you please introduce yourself?
Hello everyone, my name is Tolorunlogo Akinrinola. I go by the name Tolo or TL. I, for myself, as you all know, as you all heard, I am a graduation coach at the Ottawa Catholic School Board. My journey to get there and thus revealing some more about myself is I have a background in psychology and neuroscience. With that, I have taken time to study policy as well. So with that and diplomacy and all of the different attributes that go into advocacy, so that is a very big part of me, and thus why I do what I do day in and day out within the school board that I'm in. And in addition to that, part of the advocacy that I do in terms of helping students is using my giftings as an artist to help them find creative solutions to problems and issues that they're currently facing, and also just to unlock their creativity in regards to any area or interest that they have. So that is who I am, and I look forward to sharing more about myself as I answer the questions and we discuss throughout this webinar.
Thank you very much, Tolo. You said you prefer Tolo? Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. And I love that you both start there because you have very, very perspectives and experiences that bring you into this world of not just education, but working with students, particularly youth advocacy. And those varied perspectives, oftentimes we don't possibly pay attention to how useful, how vital they are, as it has to do with student engagement, and youth empowerment. So I'll start with this question for both of you. Um, Thinking back to your journey, your life experiences, you started sharing a little bit of those. Can you share a memorable experience where mentorship and or leadership significantly impacted a student's academic journey or personal growth?
I can speak to that. So I know in my own experience, it's one thing I can speak to is it was even last year wherein I had a student who didn't come to school at all. She really didn't see that academics and the school environment was designed for her. So I was very fortunate. I was very blessed to be able to meet her at that juncture, and with that, provide that level of mentorship, provide that level of care, which then resulted in her, turning her attendance around, handing in the assignments, and when I came into the school, the news I was getting was, oh, we don't know if she's going to graduate. Oh, this is something that happens in the family. And then it turned to her walking the stage, getting her diploma, shaking the principal's hands, and her also not just doing that arbitrarily without having a plan of what to do or what she wants to study, but having an understanding of where she can see herself after her time in high school. So that's for that. But I also to that, I also speak to how, for my own self, I know growing up, I was fortunate to have a black male teacher in elementary school, Mr. Prince, and he held me to a high standard, and that high standard is played a significant role in me caring about my own academics, just leaving me here. So yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing, Dion.
Sure, I can go right after that. So starting my world in healthcare, I fell into it as an event planner and for the hospital, and then a position came up within the Surgical Skills Center. So Mount Sinai has a University of Toronto Surgical Skills Center within Mount Sinai, and I was an administrative assistant for the Surgical Skills Center as well as a simulation lab. I was a program coordinator for simulation courses that we're running. But while working in that field and that environment, you're like, okay, you see some students coming in and they're getting co-op positions, they're volunteering, and then you start to hear the managers like, oh, this is this doctor's child and that's nurse's child. And I'm just like, okay. So I see how it's going. One day, a young black girl peeks into the lab. I'm like, what are you looking for? And she's just like, oh, I'm interested in, I want to be a doctor. I'm just like, go to volunteer services. Tell them you want to work here and I will make sure that the coordinators hire you to be a volunteer here. She did so. And Samantha, she worked, I can't remember how many months she worked there, but she was just like so thankful for me for just seeing her and just giving her the opportunity. Fast forward years later, I get an email last year. She's like, because she had goals. She said she wants to go to Grenada to do her med school and everything. And I was like, okay, you got plans, and all of the above. I get an email from her so I can write a letter of recommendation for her to get into her residency program. I was like, of course, anything you need, whatever you want, that's it. And then about 2 weeks ago, she told me she got into the residency program at Syracuse University for family medicine. And I was so excited and so happy. I only go on my LinkedIn just to see if she responds to me. And I was just like, just give me your personal email because I'm not gonna come on here much. But don't get me wrong, might go in there. But I was so happy to see that. And those are the reasons why I'm like, I'm gonna help the Black students. I want to help them in anything in medicine because I'm working in this field and I'm seeing what's going on. It took me a while to get to where I'm at now, but I'm seeing what's going on and seeing how can I help. And since then I've helped any student who has an idea of what they want to do. I'm like, and during university, I'm like, what are you into? Okay, let me see if I can get you an observership at this hospital when I was working at St. Mike's Hospital. Let me see if I can do whatever. So now I'm in a different environment of now high school students to be like, what do you need? Or even med school students and undergraduates. I'm like, how can I help you guys to grow? What do you guys want to learn? Do you want to learn more about suturing? We have kits you can borrow. You want to learn more about, blood pressure cuffs you want to practice? We have stuff in our office you can borrow. So this is where I now put my space and help in helping it. And so it just shows like mentorship, it just grows and it just goes in a circle and it doesn't matter, it doesn't stop.
Thank you so much for sharing those stories, both of you showing those accounts, because one things I pulled from that for both of you, you said, number one, you had people in your life that mentored you. Number two, those students, you were able to see that they needed to see themselves being able to achieve what they hoped for, right? Achieve what they needed or wanted, and you just helped guide them in that direction. So I ask you this next question. In your experience, what specific qualities or skills makes a mentor or a graduation coach particularly effective in supporting marginalized students, and I'll say Black students? We know far too often, unfortunately, the numbers are not favorable in the graduation rates, going into post-secondary, or even thinking of areas like in the trades, just life after secondary school. What skills, what qualities do you think are most effective for a mentor or a graduation coach in working with racialized students?
I can go. I always say listening and guidance. So I'm very big on like I'll see the students, I'll be like, what's going on? What's up? It'll be friends, kids. I'm like, what are you doing? And just listening to them and just say like, oh, this is what their interests are. And even the students that, have graduated from my programs, I continue to work with them and ask them what they're looking for. And I talk to them and see what their future goals are, their plans, and see how I can help them. So a student recently, I held a March break meetup for my last year, my summer mentorship students from 2024. And I was in the room and just letting them hang to come together. And like one by one, they just kept coming to me, and I felt like a guidance counselor. They just kept coming and sitting beside me and like, Dionne, so like, this was happening right now at school, and I haven't heard anything, or I'm interested in this, but my mom really wants me to do this. And I'm like, but I really love the arts. And I'm like, okay. So I said, there's volunteer opportunities, and anything I see and I hear, and I will send to you. And so that same student I saw, I think it's called Tops Outdoor Picture Show, and they're looking for volunteers and summer workers. So right away, I know she's interested in that. So I said that to her this week actually. But like anything, they're just talk to them. They're people too. Just because they're younger doesn't matter. Just talk to them and just see how you can relate. What I was told recently, like when you work with younger people, they make you feel like you're younger and you look younger. So here I am. So,
You
but
look younger. You look younger for
thank
sure,
you.
for sure. There you go.
But I always say just give listening and giving guidance. And like we hear opportunities. I know I hear a lot of opportunities, and I get a lot of emails of so many things that's happening within Toronto. And I'm always sharing. Some of the boys who were in my program last year, I'm like, what are you guys interested in? What you finished school? And they're like trades. I'm like, all right, cool, no problem. I don't mind that you guys come into the program and medicine's not for you. But I'm like, tell me. If you told me I see so many things going on with trades that I can send to you. They're like, all right, cool, miss. But it's just like just listen and talking. That's all I say.
Thank you for that. Listening, talking, remembering their people. Tara?
Yeah. For myself, I totally agree with Dion, that that listening and talking is very integral, and also, I think it's just always being ready to talk with them, not just about what it is that they want to do particularly, but walking them with that journey, because sometimes kids also need that help of figuring out who they are, and so just making your availing yourself to let them know that, or as you go on this journey, I'm that soundboard that you can use from time to time as you go there, because it does, I find it does play along, it does play a significant piece wherein they know that they have that safe space of knowing that when it comes with you, like when they come and talk to me, for example, that they don't have to have everything figured out right there and then, because I know that's many times that's what a lot of youth struggle with. They feel like they have to, like once they're leaving, in my case, once they're leaving high school, they have to have post-secondary figured out what they want to do after post-secondary and everything. But I'm just letting them know like, hey, like it's okay. You just need to enjoy the process and know how to enjoy the journey which you're going on. So I'll say that's one of the things that make for like a good graduation coach and a good mentor. And also at the same time, it's that with that, just that consistency of checking in, consistency of here's the opportunity. And many times that consistency of did you use the opportunity that I sent to you? And so things like that, they go a long way because when a lot of times when students know that they have someone watching their back and they have someone that's gonna always be there to check in on them and check up on them, they themselves now take that ownership to ensure that they are utilizing the resources, me being that case, like, and other things around them, using the resources to their advantage.
Thank you for sharing that, Tolo. And before you go, I pointedly asked this question to you because you talked about sharing opportunities, ensuring that we are there with students, walking with students throughout the journey. As a graduation coach, what are some of the most prevalent barriers that Black and racialized youths encounter within the Canadian public school system today? What are some of those barriers you've identified with your students?
That's a great question. Can spend a whole other hour talking about this one. But just to keep it straight to the point, one of the barriers that I see and my students themselves tell me is that they don't see themselves represented in what they're learning. Is that their curriculum is not culturally relevant. And when the curriculum is not culturally relevant, it does impact their level of their ability to it's not I won't say critically think, but their ability to engage with what they're learning from the vantage point of let me now bring my world into it. It becomes hard for them to do that. It becomes something that they don't, they're not ready to do right away, simply because they don't see themselves there and what it is that they're learning. Another thing that I do see is there is still that, it may not be in relation to, is there still that overrepresentation in terms of disciplinary ways that Black and racialized kids are dealt with, but also at the same time, it's the lack of support that some of them receive, be it from other teachers or administration, and them now not necessarily feeling safe to share their experience of be it racism or microaggressions that they may be experienced, that they have experienced around them, or yeah, they experienced around them. Um, yeah, and then there with that, another barrier that is there is for newcomer families. Many time many As in Ontario, the population of newcomers significantly has increased, and within that population there's also a significant population of Black and racialized students there. But with that new population now, there's a lot of teachers that don't necessarily know how to engage or don't know how to, for lack of better words, handle this new population that is in their schools, because a school that was once predominantly white or let's just say Eurocentric now is not the same anymore, just due to the socioeconomic class that surrounds the schools within the school's jurisdiction. And now teachers having to adjust is something that isn't, it's not something that is quickly done. And when that is not quickly done, students are the other end of that, where now, um, as I said, they're learning things that don't relate to them. There are cultural differences that teachers don't understand or are not taking the time to understand. So now there's issues in terms of behaviors when there's really the child is just really trying to understand the culture that is in the classroom. So that's that. And then taking it also within parents. Many times parents, because they may not necessarily know the education system, there's that barrier of them now being able to help their child in the school because they don't know who to talk to or what points to bring up when they're meeting with administration. So those are some of the barriers that I see affect children. It affects students during their educational journey. And I'll stop there.
I know, thank you for that. And I think that, sorry, thank you for that. And I think that leads into this question for you, Dionne, because you have the privilege of working within education from a community focus, from that community background. Yes, focused in the area of medicine, but really rallying and engaging community in a way that provides meaningful experiential learning for students. From your perspective, how does systemic bias or racism in schools affect students' motivation and academic outcomes? Tola mentioned some of those issues that are identified. How have you find it from that community perspective?
Yeah, I thank you for that, Total, because I hear and I see things. I talked to my manager last year when I first started this role. I was just like, come September, I want to get into community. I want to get into schools. I want to make sure, like, I want to see the students. I don't just want to be like, we're in the schools, we're emailing the guidance counselors, the graduation coaches, we're emailing to say, here's a program. I want to get in the schools. But then, you get into the schools and you're like, okay, hi, how are you doing? Here's more information about our program. But you start to realize, and after a while of doing this now, I'm just like, okay, here comes the impact. Here comes the impact I'm dealing with, like impact on motivation, low self-esteem, a lot of its surroundings, right? If their friends are not into it, why would they be into it, right? And I hear that even from my students who I work with as well too, and decreased engagement, and they participate less. You see them just like, oh, see you, but they're like, I'm just passing you because I don't want to talk to you. Another thing is the impact on academic outcomes, limited access to resources. I've heard students say, I've never heard of this program, but the teachers and guidance counselors are giving them to certain students and not all students. And like, I've never heard of this. I've had a parent who I'm like, oh, she's telling me, oh, I told my daughter to register. And she knew this program from a friend of hers. I was like, I've contacted the schools. I've contacted the guidance counselors. And you're like, how did she hear about it? She's like, Mom, this is how I heard about it. So she's just like, but the parents are like, I never heard anything about this. So I don't know how things are communicated to parents regarding, opportunities for their students. And we all deal with the long-term consequences, right? Here comes grade 12 and they're just figuring it out, or they're not figuring it out. They're just like, I don't even care to be here. So you don't want them to get to that point.
Hmm.
I always say start them young, start them grade 9. That's why we have med links that starts at grade 9, but not all programs are like that, right? And they're not all focused on medicine, but U of T does have a lot of programs that I can share the link, but there's programs for all grades. And lately it shows, it's like I said, it's who's getting the access, who's getting the information. So I always find I working with students and hearing teachers and hearing graduation coach and hearing guidance counselors, like who's getting the access. That's always my number one thing. And if I can show and give anything to everybody, I'm giving it to everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much for that answer. And a common thread I find in what both of you mentioned was that really and truly, when students don't see themselves represented, when students don't see themselves as part of the learning, part of the system, they disengage because then what is in it for me? But when we are proactive and intentional about not just who we're sharing it, sharing the information with, but how we're sharing the information, ensuring that there are multi modes of accessing the information, then there are opportunities for students to really connect with those programs. And yes, please, Dion, feel free to drop the link in the chat, and myself will grab it and share it with our network as well. But actually, Dion, I will come to you because you started talking about this. You said there are different programs that U of T offer for different grades for students to really get that experiential learning. I keep using that word because I think it's quite important, experiential learning. Can you provide some examples of outreach programs or initiatives that have successfully increased the engagement of Black students in different programs?
Sure. I can start with my program, which is a summer mentorship program. It's been running for 30 years now. Actually, this year makes it 31 years. It started out with 7 students. Now we're at 100 students per program. This year, my manager told me we've had the highest number of applicants. We've had over 567 applicants from all over the GTA for 100 spots. And tell you it was not easy, and it's still not easy because I have to decline students next week and it's not going to be fun. We also have MedLinks. Is for programs for grade 9 to grade 12. And that's just providing opportunities to learn about medicine. So they're doing virtual, in person. They can do it from home. If your students are in Ottawa, they can learn about this from in Ottawa from home. Does that really have to be in Toronto? But our focus is for Black, Indigenous, Latin American, Filipino students who live in priority neighborhoods or priority schools, and we want to give them opportunities. We have a big initiative that we're starting out for this year is that we would love to get in touch with schools where we want to come to your schools. We're working with med students to come and provide programming, CPR, quick lessons, whatever we can do to provide programming and help students and get them open to the idea of medicine or just health sciences in general. I don't like to just say medicine because not everybody wants to be a doctor. There's so many careers in hospital working there that you know of. And then we have STEAM design in our offices, which is as well for Black and Indigenous Filipino, Latin American students as well too. And that's a summer program. Our programs were for the summer, the students make $1,600. They also receive a high school credit for that goes towards their grade 12 graduation credit, as well as we provide them with local TTC transportation to and from for the 4 weeks in the summer that they're into the program. So that's just us here at Medicine. And so there's so much more, and I will put it in the chat, the enrichment page, but that is just us here. And there's lots to do. Engineering has programs, kinesiology, law, I can share more information. And a lot of them even also provide scholarships for students just to be in the programs. So don't deter them to be like, oh, you can't get in. Yeah, it might be $1,600 to get in for 1 week, but there's a scholarship. And let those other people pay. You get the scholarship, you know? So there's lots of opportunities and anything I can share with students. I go to schools and they're like, oh, but I'm into law. I'm like, well, here is this. I'm into this. I'm like, well, here's another program. So I'm always willing and open to sharing anything. I'm always wanting to learn as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing those. Those numbers are those numbers are what's the word I will use there? Encouraging. You started at 30 years ago, 567 students enrolled, even though there's still just 100 spots. We're hoping there will be more in subsequent years. But that speaks to the power of the program. That speaks to the power of the programming. Thank you for sharing that and also the link. We'll be more than happy to share that with our network so that students can see ways in which they can learn more about the fields they may be interested in or learn more about fields they never thought they would be interested in to sort of get to know it in a low pressure, low stakes environment. Because sometimes I often tell students myself as an educator, Miss, I don't want to do this, that, and the third. I'm like, okay, well, do what you why don't you try out a certain thing and see that you don't like it, right? It's easier to cross off the things you don't want to do and then hone in on what you do want to do, right? So that process of elimination. And then I'll come to you, Solo, because I know that part of your portfolio, as you had shared with me, is developing programs that really helps students to see themselves in their learning, to be able to center themselves in their learning. So the question for you is, what approaches should educators and community organizations prioritize when developing outreach programs to effectively connect with Black and racialized youths? What are some successful strategies you've learned through your role?
The things that I've learned and I've taken away from trial and error in terms of building programs and seeing how they run is it's very important that as these programs are being developed, that youth themselves are part of the decision making process of how these programs are going to be ran. Because one thing that does happen is that many times as be it educators or adults, who forget that these kids do have lives, and also these kids do have preferences of what it is they want to learn and what it is that they want to be engaged in. So it's very important that youth voice is also centered in the programming that you're developing for youth. And that's one thing. Another thing that is very important is the creation of programs that really lean into the cultural relevant, lean into being culturally relevant, wherein now everything that the program provides the youth for allows them to see who they are, connect with their identity, allows them to be surrounded by their community. One thing I like to say as I work within the board, and sometimes it causes arguments with the higher ups, is if I'm having an event and I'm going to provide these kids food, the food has to be from their culture. The food cannot just be from anywhere else. So that's what I mean by just that intentionality, that everything is connected into who those Black students are. That because it does go a long way, and it's things that students do pay attention to. Because too many times, students do think that once they head into academic spaces or spaces for programming where it's supposed to uplift them, better them, and grow them, they have to sort of put aside their culture, put aside things that is part of their identity, be it they're African, be it they're Caribbean, be it they're from the Pan-African diaspora. So I do think that is a very important point to always keep there. And also just the importance of when programming is developed, that representation, even in the individuals running the program, is there. To the point that even now, when I am partnering with organizations, I do ask, do you have a Black or racialized person to facilitate the program? Reason being is that although it may not seem like a salient or significant thing, but it goes a long way when students who are Black or who are racialized are able to see themselves in those positions. Because when they now see themselves in those positions, they now know that, okay, I can be a leader. They now see themselves that, okay, I can be a person who facilitates a robotics workshop or who facilitates a leadership workshop. And from there, it starts getting their gears and their minds turning, because it's from and sometimes for youth, it's opposite of what culture tells them about themselves when they now see an individual who looks like them, talks like them, but is doing something that is different and is benefiting their community through the programs that is being ran.
Thank you so much for that. For highlighting that the importance even of who is sharing the information, who is speaking to whatever opportunities, learning, really modalities that we are trying to use to reach the students, because it's not just about what is being learned, but who is teaching as well. Thank you for that. And Dionne, I'll come back to you with this question, towing that line of planning, execution, of outreach program to enhance student engagement and also their relevance and effectiveness for students. I just wanted to ask you, in your opinion, how can students be better included? I know that there's some efforts being made to include students, but I'll say this even as a classroom teacher, sometimes it is hard to wrangle students. Sometimes it is quite hard to even get students to share their ideas or share their perspectives or share, what they would love to see in programs. What are some strategies or what are some ways in which students can be better included in the planning processes?
I think I had this recently, Mark and I attended the BSA, so Black Student, was it Black Student
So
Associations?
association, yeah.
Yeah, Black Student Association for all high schools in Toronto. And they had an event, and I contacted somebody and they got us to have a table there. And how, like, say, excited I was to see like Black students all there, a part of their schools, and they're like, this is what they're doing. They're putting on these events. And this is where I was telling one of the teachers, because I went to the teacher sessions as well. I said, how do you guys make sure that the students keep coming back?
Mm,
And how do you do this? And they're like, well, every year they have a call for it. I'm like, how about, and this is my suggestion, how about you guys have it that, grade 8 students are coming into grade 9. Have a table. This is how you can get involved. Start having like a fair to say, hey, this is how you can get involved so that those who left in grade 12, here comes the circle and the cycle doesn't stop, right? And this is how the grade 10s become the mentors to the grade 9s. Here comes the great, and everybody's a mentor to somebody, and it's just a cycle that doesn't stop. And that was my suggestion. So seeing how I look at some mentorship program, we have people who are doctors now, and they're like, how do I get back involved? Because the cycle doesn't stop,
Mm.
right? And it can't just be in a post-secondary world. It needs to start happening in high schools. So there's programming happening. So I always try to say, students, find mentorship and volunteering. It could be church, it could be anything. Just you have an interest in like flowers, volunteer at a flower shop to see what you can do. You have an interest in craft. There's something that you saw, oh, this looks cool. My little nephew, he's 10 now. Went to the barber shop, saw a lady, helped her with her art supplies, and now he's volunteering at 10 years old in an art supply store. And she's running classes, and so it's just like just these are the little things that they can do. Sometimes I just feel like as high school students, they get so close-minded. I'm coming from a world of where social media wasn't our thing. But now it's like they get so just like focused on these things. I'm like, and they just have so much information and they're not taking it in to be like, maybe just it's too much information. So, start looking in peer leadership, student advisory panels. If I could hear, sorry to say, the white kids are doing all these things. Why can't you get into these things? Don't look at it as like, oh, the white kids do it. Do it too.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know what? They're the ones who are getting out there. They're talking, they're dealing with students, they're getting onto these trips, they're doing all these things. Do what they do, get in there, let it be known and put your face out there. So that's my suggestion to that in that sense.
Thank you. And what I glean from that is it's a twofold. Number one, um, really that support, that facilitation of sustainability, where teachers foster an environment where students, from grade 8, so when they're coming into the spaces, they're linked with peer mentors, so those in grade 9, haven't gone through that programming towards the end of their year, they're able to support students coming into high school, and grade 10, grade 11, grade 12, that continues. And that sort of lights a spark, a fire in them to keep that going, even post secondary. And the second part to being, the accountability and ownership. I think that's a word, Tolo, you used earlier, students taking ownership for themselves. That if I'm interested in this, I could either sit down and watch a bunch of TikTok videos about it or get out there and actually, volunteer to learn about it. I mean, TikTok is great, but it will not give you the experience and exposure you need. Thank you for that. That was really good food for thought for those out there looking to engage youth. And Tolo, I will ask you the question. It's very similar, but in line with the hope and purpose and heart of even just graduation coaches in school. How can schools effectively integrate graduation coaches, effectively integrate, I would say, even just mentors, to support Black and racialized students in achieving academic success?
Thank you for that question. And it's a question that I think about every single day. With that being said, one of the ways that I foresee graduation coaches being better integrated into the schools in which, or for the students that they help, is um, actually allowing the graduation coaches to become fully part of the school culture that they're stepping into. Because many times graduation coaches, they have to oversee the entire school. Well, the entire school being all of the Black population within the school, and that can get a lot. And now divide that up between two schools. Sometimes it doesn't allow graduation coaches to fully get into the nitty gritty of issues that they have to advocate for, and they have to at times sometimes be the first person to know, because I can speak from experience that there are times when I'm in another school, students from other schools need me, and it's now I'm I'm sort of have to split myself, which then doesn't really allow for the work that I'm able to, the service that I'm able to provide the students to be able to fully see, like fully find a full expression. So that's one of the things, ways that I think it can be improved upon. Another one is just providing better like identity affirmance support for students, wherein they're able to know that the help that they're getting is not just something that is catered to them, that is something that they are able to fully understand and fully sit with and see themselves within the solution being provided and support being provided for them. With that being said, I do have one more thing that I wrote down over here, and this is a big one, is the use of data. Many times, one thing that is being faced is that, or one thing I see is that there's a lack of data that is shared. And because of that lack of data that is shared, many times you don't fully get a full picture of where your services are needed and what you as a graduation coach or as a mentor can do to either create effective programming or to create or to be able to even help students in a very effective manner, because many times there are teachers that may not even allow you to be a part of the workspace of the classroom, and then now you don't know what's going on with the student when they're not around you, and there's a whole host of things. So it all comes back to graduation coaches and those who are in this position, even as mentors, being brought into the culture of the school system in which that they're working in, so that they're not looked as outside parties, but they're actually looked as a part of the a part of the school and of the educational journey that educators are in the whole school are responsible for.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that answer. The importance of understanding the threads and fabric of the community in which you're meant to serve. That I mean, I know I this wasn't on the question list, but I just wanted to share this or ask both of you this before we opened up the floor to anyone who might have a question for our panelists tonight. Um, for both of you, the question is, and whomever would like to answer first, both of you, the question is, oftentimes there's this discourse that, why are we all of a sudden hyper focusing on Black students? Why are we all of a sudden only talking about Black and racialized or Black, Indigenous, students or students from racialized groups? Shouldn't it just be everyone has the opportunity, everyone can succeed, everyone should have the support? Just share some of your thoughts on that as it has to do with the nature of the work that you do, because it is focused.
I
Uh,
can
I
start.
oh,
Okay, okay.
go ahead.
Recently, I was recently sent an email,
Mm,
random Gmail that has 12345 at Gmail, and why is this program only for Black students? It should be for everybody, and la di di la di da. Like I said earlier in my when I first start, I saw the white kids coming through, the Asian kids come through and get everything. Oh, my friend's daughter, my this, that, whatever. Why can't we do the same? Why aren't we doing the same, right? And not everybody's doing it as a Black person, and I totally understand and I see it and I see it a lot, right? But why aren't we doing the same? So people can talk and say what they want, and I'm ready to go at them. But I grew up in a neighborhood of I grew up in low income neighborhoods in Toronto. We never got the opportunities. I thank God. I always tell everybody I had a Black teacher from grade two straight, a Caribbean teacher grade two, but Black teacher straight grade until grade seven, and
Mm-hmm.
then grade eight.
Mm-hmm.
Great. And then I was like, wow, and I tell people that now, I'm like, this will never happen now,
Mm-hmm.
mm,
right? So all I know is to be Black. All
mm,
I know is the opportunities that were given to me. I took African dance. We had Black History summer classes. We had after school programs. So how are you to tell me we can't give these opportunities to everybody? But when you go outside of that community, outside of that world, you're like, wow, these people are getting different opportunities, right? So, and they're not sharing them with us, and they're trying to make it seem like, oh, everybody's coming. There's a program at the Next Surgeon program that happens through Toronto Community Housing, and Stacy Golden, she's the one who runs that program over there. and she said she took her students to a science fair that was happening at U of T, and she's like her students stood scared because all the
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
students who were there were all Asian and white from all sorts of like private schools, and they're just looking at them like, why are you guys here? And how did you get here?
Mm-hmm.
mm,
It's because they heard a presentation and they wanted to be involved as well too. So it's just like you have to, the minds are just change are not there. So if the
mhm,
students are like this, the parents are like this,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? So like I say, I'm ready to go at anybody wants to go at me if with it when it comes to it. Yes, I
yeah,
focus on Black and Indigenous students. Let's
mhm,
go. You
yeah,
know, I'm gonna help out the Black, Indigenous, Filipino, Latin American. I'm gonna help those students out because you know what? Those are the
mhm,
communities that are out here working the hardest and they're not getting the opportunities.
yep.
So you go ahead, Tolo.
Oh, I was enjoying it. I was enjoying your response. But just to add to what you yourself is saying, for myself, I've been fortunate. I am fortunate to have done my master's in education, in which I studied the need for culturally relevant pedagogy and pedagogy for pre-service teachers, and with that, the amount of research that dates back the amount of research that shows the lack of intentionality about the education that Black students are receiving and the overrepresentation of Black students when it comes to disciplinary factors that drive them out of school and other other factors within our society that negatively impact the educational quality that students receive. That same research, that same finding, it's something that has been talked about in let's say 1940, 1950, and that's in Canada. So, and that same rhetoric, or not let's say rhetoric, but that same talking points has existed across decades. So now in my role, and I do get this asked a lot, it's like, oh, can you just like help everyone? I lay into the research and I let people know I'm Black and educated and this is why I'm here. And with that, they come to realize people many times because there's this hidden curriculum that is within education. There's this hidden curriculum even within the fabric of how we come to understand society. And that hidden curriculum is to hide away what the injustice that is done many times to Black individuals. It's it's something that um, I bring to the forefront and I let people know that the reason why I'm here for Black students is because there is a system in place that is working against them. There's a system in place that always leaves them at the bottom of the totem pole. And the thing is that because you're part of the system, you're not seeing the effects of the system. You're just seeing, oh, this kid is not coming to school, or you're just saying, oh, this kid is not doing his schoolwork. There's so many different factors at place, and truth be told, some people don't know that they're playing into the system that be as well. So when I do get posed to that question, that's when I do now hit them with the research, the facts, the numbers, everything, and then from there, because that's one thing I like to think about is for them to understand, you also have to speak their language. And with that, it's now allowing them to see that there's these opportunities that these students are not, they don't regularly get. And because they don't regularly get it, they're now, when they now step back into the classroom, they're not able to see themselves beyond the sheet of paper that they don't really want to do. That they don't see that we're doing this to set myself up for the future, right? Because and then when students don't have something that they're aiming for, which many times is not presented to them because they're not, as Dion talked about, they're not the population or the demographic where opportunities are readily shared, or where the information about opportunities are shared with regularly. They themselves now, they as these students now, they don't see themselves beyond the brick and mortar classrooms and what they're capable of doing. So, which is not the case all the time, but it's also that inspirational piece is not there. But using facts and figures and using that, the insights that the research has shown is things that um, I do present to people that say, oh, why we only focus on Black or Indigenous or Latino or racialized kids, or in my case, just Black students. It's because there is a system at play, and the work I'm here to do is to dismantle that system. So,
Thank you so much for that answer,
yeah.
for both of you for those answers, because I hear the passion, I hear the understanding, I hear the knowledge, I hear the lived experience. I will say similarly for myself, many people ask me why I'm so passionate as an educator to work predominantly with racialized students. You know, it's like, why are you always talking about black, black, black? I'm like, well, because no one else is talking about us. So thank you so much for that. I now open the floor to anybody who might have a question for our panelists. Please feel free to unmute the mic. You can state your name if you're comfortable to do so, and you can ask your questions at this time. We have a quiet bunch today.
Sure, I can ask a question. Hi, because experiential learning is always so great, and there are the connections that we make, but sometimes it's hard to make them because they need like the infrastructure. Would we be able to maybe connect with somebody in Ottawa to possibly do some sort of exchange program of students or exchange program of programs, just so we can get a better understanding of what those students are needing? And then you can get a better understanding of what our students are needing, because we also have students who end up in these places. So we'll have students who might go to high school here, but end up in Ottawa at some point. And I've had students apply for my summer program from Ottawa. So is that something that we would be able to do? Because if we don't stay connected, it's just probably a lot easier for people to tear it down.
Mm.
I guess I can speak to that. So for myself, that's currently part of the work that I'm trying to do. I've been fortunate to meet Dionne at the National Black Canadian Summit, and it's with that I do see the importance of not just keeping the work that we do to like one city, and then another city is doing something else, and now we're just replicating each other but not working together. Because I also, when now students go to post-secondary, I know in Ottawa I'm from the GTA, but in Ottawa there's this big culture of students staying in Ottawa when they're going to post-secondary, which I'm very like, what? Don't you? There's so much to explore. But I know in Toronto there's this very big culture of students. Once it's now time to go to post-secondary, they're going everywhere in all places. So with that, I know that there is that importance of bringing in programming, such as like the summer program that Dionne oversees, so that when students do come here into the city, they do understand that level of care and wraparound support that they had in Toronto is a culture that stays and moves across those city or town lines and finds them when they're now in Ottawa as well. So like with that, the work is being done. It does take time, just because there's a lot of red tape about things are being like what can be done, where like and then I've come to find it's like where's the money coming from. So it's so yeah, so I do resonate with what you're saying, Mark, and I do think it is something that's very important. And just please know that the gears are turning so that things like that do happen for students.
Thank you both for the question, Mark, and for the response, Tolo. I'm opening the floor once again. If there are any questions for our panelists, I know that they shared very wonderful insights with us. I am grateful for their knowledge. I hope we all are, and that we've been able to glean something, really takeaways with us, but just also opening up the floor for any other questions.
Yeah, so I have a question about intersectionality in your experience, both in mentorship and also in the programs themselves. So, are you seeing opportunities for students who are Black and, let's just say, students with disabilities, students with different gender identities? Are there these conversations happening in the spaces that you have described to us? Are there mentorship programs dedicated to those areas as well? And if not, what insights do you have that you think you could share with us about that?
Well, in my program, because I get students from everywhere, so I do have students who identify as trans female. Like last year, I had a trans male, a female transitioning to male, and in that sense, we ask, what your pronouns are, what you go by. We give up buttons as well to be like to tell us like if you at the beginning of the school year or the school year, summer school year, just in that sense. But we provide information during the program. We have talks. Bold is a talk that they do that's learning about Black and sexuality and the LGBT community. So we make sure that we have information there and set. And if anything, we are here as we also train our coordinators in that sense for any kind of training that needs to be happening.
Uh, and speaking to that question, for myself, I know I have students who have disabilities who are Black and also have disabilities. And for myself, when I do excursions, um, I always double check and triple check that where we are going is accessible for them and accommodations are made for them. It's just being very aware that I do have one student wherein we can go around, let's say we do a tour of let's say of a post-secondary institution. That would be something like, oh, that's simple to do. Let's just do a tour. But for her, it's actually something that takes a lot out of her. So now adjusting programming so that it can accommodate her learning as well is something that to be honest, I have started to become very much aware of and looking into the policies about how students with disabilities are cared for and looked after, and with that, not just taking it from the perspective of me being a able-bodied man, but now asking the students what she needs or what her peers who also have disabilities what they need so that they themselves are not losing out on the experiences that their other peers are having who may be able to, let's say for example, go on tours or just be moving around all day long. So that's the things that conversations that are happening here so that way um, everyone is able to benefit from the programming and the learnings that is occurring.
Thank you for that question, Mark. I see your physical hand. Go ahead.
I to say I really, really like that. I think one of the things that we can do is be a little bit more progressive and move away from creating making accommodations and start creating opportunities for
Mhm.
those individuals. So if you are somebody with a disability, yes, accommodations will be made, but there should also be positions made for you. Now, granted, you can't make a position like that. You'd have to scale it all the way back to figure out what is it that we need to do. But also, we shouldn't be accommodating for our people. That's not what we should be doing. We should be forcing everybody to take our people, take them how they are, take them how we see them, and then like build from there. Because if we let others accommodate, it just feels like they're giving us something when in reality this stuff belongs to everybody,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. Changing the idea of normative, normality, and ensuring that everyone is, for lack of better verbiage, everyone is represented and everyone is part of this table we are creating for the society that we want. Thank you so much for that, Mark, and for the question, Deborah. Um, and just to for both of our panelists, I had shared here some closing insights you might want to share with us. If there's one key takeaway or one next step that you want people to hold on to after hearing this webinar, um, what would that be? What would that be? Why don't we start with you, Dionne?
Pressure. Uh,
You can also pass. You can also pass.
I say next step. I feel like community, the word community and the word silo has been a big word for me this year in learning and getting into community. But I feel like this is get rid of the word silo and just really seriously practice community regarding like getting to know each other, seeing it like I met Tolo and it's just like, oh, you're doing this. How can we make sure that we do this the same? It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but how can we make sure that the students are getting opportunities over there as well too? And so this is how the community starts and we can start building because I shouldn't only have 500 applicants for one program downtown when we have universities all over the GTA, all over Ontario. Everybody should be providing these kind of opportunities so students in their neighborhoods can go and where their communities can go to them. So I say really a big thing for me is community and like let's make it grow.
Thank you. Stella?
For myself, I'll say um, the one thing for me is a collective impact. That is something that I really like to champion because I strongly feel as though there's the more research you do, the more you dig, the more you find that there are programs, there are organizations that do a lot of work cater specifically to Black youth who are within the education system. It may be education particularly, or just catering to their needs. Now, it's about coming together and finding a way of working with one another so that as soon as the child is in school, out of school, figuring out what to do after school, there's always that group, always that affinity group that helps them along their journey. And with that, one thing I also want to add is the importance of instilling the value. It's funny that Dionne talked about community, but instilling the value of community in youth. One thing I can attest to that my students rave about that we do here in the Catholic School Board, we do a Black Student Forum. So like where we bring all the BSAs together and we have a whole day dedicated to them, learning about mentorship, leadership. Yeah, they dance, they just laugh with one another. They make new connections and friendships. And at the end of it, they're saying, "Sir, when are we gonna go back?" Right? But it all speaks to the value that they see in community and they see in working together and coming together and just there and with that I take that to now say that, oh, so they really, this is a value that really needs to be instilled in them, so by the time that they grow up and they go through the education system, it is not something that is new, it is something that they have practiced for so long, so by the time they now become those who are no longer in high school, no longer in post-secondary, they want to be a part, they want to now also instill that value into the next generation that comes behind them.
Thank you for that. Community and collective impact. Community and collective impact. I just want to take this moment to thank you both so very much for your time, for your wisdom, for your insights. For sharing some of the ways you are working with our children, our future, as our theme says tonight. Really, it's about empowering Black excellence, our students, our future. I am so grateful to know of you both in the capacity of the work you're doing, the work you are, I would say, in lack of better words, championing, fighting for Black and racialized students and community. So thank you, thank you, thank you so much. And I know that it goes without saying that the Ontario Alliance of Black Student Educators are with you in this fight. We are with you in this needed change that we're moving towards. You can always call on us anytime. We are happy to work with you anytime. And without further ado, I will turn it over to our president, Deborah Buchanan Walford, who is just being phenomenal in leading our organization through very strategic changes in a post pandemic world.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And I echo the sentiments. This was a really rich panel. And I'm looking forward to, further panels, follow-ups, even hearing from some of the students that you are both working with. That would be amazing. A few months ago, we had a panel with some students talking about the impact of, ABR and what they have been doing in their own capacities. And I am a huge, champion of student voice. So I really appreciate what you both shared this evening. And overall, and I know everyone who's watching this now and who will watch this later can attest to, there are so many nuggets that we took from this conversation. And I just want to reiterate a few. I really love how you said, Dion, that mentorship is a circle. And Tolo, you kind of ended with that, right? That we want the students that are going through this mentorship and cultivating this sense of excellence and success to now continue that, right? And um, in Indigenous teaching, there's this concept of 7 generations back and 7 generations forward. And I'm sure within our own Afrocentric indigeneity, there are several similar proverbs and idioms, but that's really essential. And also just the fact that we do need to have opportunity. I like the way you worded it, Mark, because we oftentimes look at things from a deficit lens that, our students need help and support. And they're brilliant as they are, many of them. It's the opportunity, and you both touched on that, and I'm really glad that we're reiterating that. And last but not least, just continued access to space. And I love that energy, Dion, of you're ready to take on whoever, whenever, whatever, because I am on that energy as well when it comes to Black youth and Black community, because it's so intrinsic in every other community that when it happens in our community, is when people actually pay attention and reflect that, oh, you're being intentional with this set of people. We don't realize it that everyone else does that because it's so embedded already in their systems and it works so well for them. So yes, and I would just like to end by saying thank you all for being here. I did say I was going to talk about the conference, so I will just briefly share that right now. So, yes, our 10th annual conference, and I'm really happy about that, is coming up. We have a wonderful lineup of keynotes that I will just share right now as I'm talking. Um, There we go. And the conference has two actual sections. On Friday, we are going to have a Francophone symposium and a youth symposium where we will have the entire Francophone symposium dedicated to the Afro-Francophone community. We have the two keynote speakers that you just saw there, Dr. Amal Mabido and Webster from Quebec, who is a spoken word artist, musician, all kinds of things. He's really awesome, and I'm so looking forward to what he has to say. And then the Youth Symposium, where we will have two dynamic speakers from Toronto. Let's just play that again while I'm talking. Alina Domingo and Zara Hassan, and they're both educators who will be leading the keynote of the Youth Symposium. And we will have teacher candidates in training, people on the ground. This is the mentorship that we're talking about, that are also planning and facilitating the youth symposium. And then we're closing off Friday with Dr. Nicole Bernhardt, who is going to be sharing her insights as well, and ending with a dinner and an affinity space. On Saturday, we will hear from the amazing former MPP of Hamilton, Senator Sarah Jama, as well as Peel District School Board Vice Principal Valda McDonald. And like I said, it's a rich lineup with multiple perspectives and voices to share what this theme, empowering Black excellence looks like in our communities and can look like. So, on that note, again, we're asking for support for the conference for ONAPSE. The more sponsorship we get, the more access we can give. We want youth to come to the conference. School boards are telling me, the cost of the bus and time release for the teachers, and it's hard. And we all know a lot of that funding is drying up, across the province. So if you can support in any way, it would be greatly appreciated. And of course, above all else, come to the conference. It will be a wonderful time. It will be a rich, engaging moment on both days, either day that you can make it. If you can make both, even better. So please get the word out within your schools, within community, and it's open to everyone, not just the Black community. There is a designated affinity moment that we'll have, but allies are welcome. People interested in supporting what we do are welcome. So thank you all so much for being here tonight. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and I hope to see you in May 30th, 31st at the conference. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for that, Deborah. It is definitely going to be a fantastic time. And without further ado, we just thank you so much for spending your time with us. And we know that this is recorded, so it'll be shared on our varied platforms as well for those who are not able to make it tonight. I do promise more people were registered, so we know that regardless, this will be information that will be shared in a meaningful way. And hopefully, we continue to build that collective impact within community for the betterment of our students. Thank you all so much. Have a good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a good night. Thank you.